everyone, and welcome back to the Colour Cave, where we like to play with art stuff. My name is Jem, and I know some of you have been waiting for this video for a very long time. Today we are going to venture back to The Ink House by Rory Dobner, which is not actually meant to be a colouring book, but it does a really good job of imitating one. And we are going to go to one of my favourite sets of pencils, and that is the Derwent Inktense pencils. So they behave like normal coloured pencils, but they are water soluble. They are ink stroke dye based pencils, so they give you really vibrant, bright colour when you dilute them out with water. There's a bajillion different ways to use these pencils, some of which will be demonstrated today, obviously. So I am really looking forward to that. So just before we jump in, I do actually have a copy of the Colouring Heaven Ink House Storybook Special. This is a back issue. I don't even know if it's still available from Colouring Heaven themselves. But even more exciting in this is the right hand side of the image that we're going to start on today. It is a double page we're starting on today. So that is up in the stash shop for anybody who wants to grab it if you maybe don't have the original book. And I also have another selection of back issues of Colouring Heaven magazine. So if you fancy one of those for yourself, you can head over to the website, to the stash shop. This is the address here. The live link is down in the description, and you can snaffle one of those for yourself. I'd just like to point out as well that I haven't jacked the prices up. They are being sold at cover price. I know if you go to try and buy some of these on, like eBay or some of the Facebook marketplaces, people really, inflate the prices. They are going for cover price. For example, this one, Victorian Botanicals here, is $7.99. So, time for a bit of colouring. The first thing that we need to do, and this is quite important, I'm going to show you the image that we're going to be colouring. This is my front to back project, so as the name suggests, I started at the beginning. So this is the image that we are colouring today. This is the page that's in the Colouring Heaven magazine version, not this section. We've got quite a lot of work to do here. I'm really excited about this page. This is actually one of my favourite pages in the entire book. I would like to match up the stained glass colours. If I just flick a couple of pages back, this turquoise and pink colour in amongst some yellow there. I would like to sort of replicate that. I don't think it's the same window because it's a different pattern, but those would create really nice reflections as well, and we could bounce some of those colours off of areas because we've actually got a cast shadow, so we could be able to utilise that and really have some fun with that as well. So I've got my swatch book here. It has been quite a while since I coloured this page, and no, I can't remember what colour it was I used, so we'll just consult the old oracle here. I think the pink colour might be fuchsia. I'm just looking at it in its darkest increment at the top here, and this dark one here. That's probably the closest thing. Yeah, I'm going to say fuchsia, and then this turquoisey blue colour. It might be dark aquamarine. I think it's either green aquamarine or dark aquamarine, and I think we'd get away with either of those. This looks a bit too greenish, so I'm going to plump with the dark aquamarine. It's not essential that we get an absolute match. Just something similar so that it ties in. A lot of people mentioned this when Johanna Basford brought out Ivy and the Inky Butterfly, and that they wanted continuity because it was a storybook, and I kind of feel the same way about this, just because it wasn't even meant to be a colouring book in the first place. These are the pencils that came in the scroller box. I wanted to mention this as well. I'm really glad that we had the Inktense pencils in the scroller box. These were a selection of some of the newer colours that were brought out a bit later on, and it was really nice to see them in there. So if you want to see a bit more of a technical look at these pencils, I'll link that video down in the description, and I'll stick it on the end card if you haven't seen it. It is a double unboxing with the upgrade, so you'll have to skip like the first half of the video, but I talk a little bit more about the characteristics of these pencils themselves. So maybe if you're watching just now and you're not into colouring in, but you would like to use them as another form of artistry, maybe check that video out. So the other thing that I always have to hand is either a sheet of paper or a rag, and that is just to wipe my water brushes on so we don't get colour cross contamination. I do have the Kuretake Zig H2O brushes here, talk about these all the time. I will link the UK Amazon listing of these down in the description if it's something you're interested in, just to see what they look like, and you can go and find them wherever it is that you may live. So this is the pack of 4. You can buy them individually, but I've got a wee teeny weeny round nib, I've got a medium sized nib, I have got a large nib, and a large nib and also a flatter one here as well. That you're never going to need any more than this, and I tend to find that most of the time I jump between these two, so the largest one for bigger areas and then the teeny weeny one because we got some teeny weeny spaces here. It is handy just to have them all kind of kicking about anyway though. We'll start with the background and do these stained glass tiles. I think that would make the most sense. So I think what we're going to do is, I don't want to have them all colour because that would make very complicated reflections. But if we take these little squares here and alternate between these colours, I think that would be quite a nice effect. And I'll maybe bring in a touch of the yellow, but we'll wait and see how this looks first. So I'm just going to start up in this corner here, just get down to business. So I'll get zoomed right in so you can see what I'm doing. I love the fact that there's a slightly sinister but not entirely scary set of talons hanging onto these books. Okay, so I just want to get a nice layer down. Now, normally I do like a light layer. You know, if any of you have watched my other colour pencil videos, I want quite a uniform single layer here. The brush is going to do most of the work. It's not the pencil that's doing the work, unless you intend to not dilute it in water. But I would like to get this fairly even. See, going in with your water brush will smooth it out, obviously, but I'll just do this all the way along this row. And see, it'll alternate. So if this one's fuchsia, then this one here will be the aquamarine colour. And so we'll wait and see how that looks before we decide what we're doing with these ones. I haven't planned anything out for this. That's the other thing I wanted to say. Sometimes when I'm doing a double page, I like to kind of get an idea of a colour palette or theme in my head. I haven't done this with this. Just wanted to go with the flow and share it with you guys, so we'll see how that goes. My next question for you is, can you please go down into the comments if you would like to see this as a series. It's not going to be a great big long, you know, epic series, but if you would like to see us continue on after today, can you let me know down in the comments? And what I'll do is I'll do them in quite a short run. So we'll do, say it's 4 videos, but the installments will be within a couple of days of each other. You know, it won't be one every 4 weeks or anything. But if there isn't enough interest, I'm not going to do it, because I mean, I'm not going to do another video on colouring, you know, this side, because it's exactly the same as this. I would just do this off camera. Now we've got a little bit in at the gutter there. Again, we can use the water brush to actually push the colour in, even though you can't get in there with your pencil. So no panicking. Okay, so making sure we're alternating though now. So this one here is going to be fuchsia. I'm kind of thinking that the piping around that, you know, that's holding the glass in, it's usually lead with stained glass windows. I might make it metallic, might get a bit of Julia K paint out and make it spangly. There are several points in this book already where I have used metallic accents on things, so it wouldn't be out of place for me to be doing it here. I think we need to remember though that this house is quite kind of like ramshackle and run down, so something that's metallic wouldn't necessarily be really shiny. It might be quite grubby. Who knows? But see, we can figure that out as we go along. So when you're doing this, especially if it's little squares like this, it's actually better to not have a sharp point. Just because you've got that softer, more rounded end, it gives you better coverage, like more even coverage. I don't know if the microphone's picking up the crows that are outside. Yeah, we're absolutely inundated with crows. It's not good. They're incredibly noisy as well. I wish they would just shut up for a while. They're bullying all the little blue tits just now. That's why I don't like them. Oh, speak of the devil. If any of you watched a couple of the last live streams, you will know that I've got one of these bird feeders that sticks to the window. And we have a steady flow of visitors. It's a busy little spot. And just as I said there about the crows bullying the blue tits, one of the blue tits is sitting, having a wee munch to himself, which is nice. Might be she. I've learned quite a lot about birds in the last couple of weeks because of this. I was never really a bird person much before, but I learned that blue tits, the males and females, have the same plumage. Because quite often with birds, it's the males that have got the sort of fancy, you know, multicolour plumage, and the girls are like just a brown colour. So it's nice that the blue tits, both of them get the fun. Okay, I'm moving on to this aquamarine colour now. This is such a pretty colour as well. I really like it. I'm kind of thinking now that I might add the yellow into these panes here, but we could maybe just have it as an accent colour, like, you know, so maybe just kick it in along like two edges. Because the light source is coming this way, but it is at a slight angle. If we look at the cast shadows, you can see here it's quite square on, but there is a bit of an angle to it. And obviously as you move further right, that spreads out. And you can see that Rory has put in these lines here, and it's the same here. So if the sun was coming in at more of an angle, it would make sense that the shadow would be in this side, and then this would be the lightest part. So, you know, that's kind of my thinking. We'll figure it out though. It is a really depressing day here at the cave. We have had some lovely weather this last maybe 2 or 3 weeks. A lot hotter than we would probably normally have, but in true Scottish style we've reverted to form, and the way I would describe the weather today is the good old Scottish word dreich, which just means like grey, drizzly, a bit miserable. Right now the fog is more or less down to, I would say visibility is less than, I would say it's like less than 10 metres. It's pretty low down. And apparently that's to give way to absolute bucket loads of rain later. It's quite early in the morning just now. Most of you know that I like to film in the mornings. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to the weather today. It is kind of good though, because I think there's the crops etc. could probably do with a drink, because it has been quite dry. But unfortunately it's not a couple of days, it's to be wet basically for like a week now. It's just that, and this always happens. We get a little burst of like really warm summery weather in May, and it gives us like false hope that we're actually going to get a good summer, and then Mother Nature just basically gives us the middle finger, and then it's wet for the entirety of the summer. This is our first full year here. I can't believe it. It's nearly a year already since we moved. Or since we started to move, should I say. Officially, we had the keys on the 1st of July, so we're not far off. But obviously, we're still in our first full year cycle in terms of the seasons, which is very important when you're on a farm. So we're still finding things out now. So we have nothing to gauge it on, but everyone that stays locally, especially the ones that have lived here a long time, keep telling us that this has been like the wettest year like ever for as long as they can remember. And there's a lot of really ancient people that hang out around here, so they've seen a lot of seasons. Everyone's kind of like blaming it on us and saying that we brought the bad weather with us from the old cave, which I don't think is fair, because the weather was wasn't particularly wet. It tends to be the west coast that's wetter in Scotland, and we're closer to the east. They can't blame us for it. One of the really nice things about using these pencils as well is you don't have to obsess too much over getting the actual amount of pencil down. If you do activate it with water and you feel it's a wee bit wishy-washy, if you let it dry properly, you can go back over with your pencil, add some texture and leave it at that, or you can obviously activate the second layer as well. The only limiting factor in that is if your paper can take it. Now with this book, as I mentioned, it's not meant to be a colouring book, let alone to take on any sort of, like wet media. You can go twice. Twice would be about the limit, but if you're using mixed media paper or watercolour paper, you should be able to layer these up without too much of a problem at all. So I would like to just do that to start with, just to see what this is going to look like. So I've got my wee medium water brush here, my green one. Look at this pink colour. Look at this pink colour. Look at it, it's so pretty. Like I just love this. Love these pencils, I really do. So yeah, I just want to dilute out what we've got here and make this pretty. You do have to work quickly with these pencils once you start to activate them. It's not like watercolour, they do not reactivate well. They're almost impossible to shift. So when you start, if you want nice smooth colour, you do have to work quite quickly, because it will start to dry fairly quickly. I'm just going to poke my water brush into that little gutter layer just to get that paint right in there. And actually it's common sense here to activate all the areas that you've used the same colour in, to save you having to keep cleaning off your brush. So do all these fuchsia parts first, and then we'll do the aquamarine ones. I really like this candle here. Like that is a well used, proper medieval looking candle. That appeals to me. I like them when all the waxes sort of run down and run over the candlestick. Okay, there we go. Our little pink ones are looking pretty good. So just before I start here now, I'm going to make sure that I've really gotten all the fuchsia off the brush. Obviously, I don't want that transferring into my blue here. So start back up at the top. You're trying to be methodical. If you're not confident with a medium brush, you can always go back to a smaller tip for spaces like this. It's entirely up to you. I am not that bothered, so I just go for it. There we are. I've missed out this part in here. See it? Cheeky. See if I can get my pencil in there at least a wee bit. Not really. Okay, I haven't cleaned off my brush yet, so there will be residual dark aquamarine there, so I'm just going to poke it in there. There we go. Now that won't be perfect, but see, because it's right in at the edge there, it's not going to make that much of a difference. Okay, let's have a wee zoom out now. Ah, that's looking pretty cute. Come on now. Right, I'm going to give that a little minute to dry. And then we're going to start working with the yellow. I think I'm going to go down the route we suggested. And I'm also going to find a couple of Julia K's metallic paints and see what we can decide on for the actual lead piping. I'll use that term loosely. So we'll blow this dry for a minute or two. Okay, so now we need to find the yellowish colour. Yellowish, that's what it looks like in hand gestures. Speaking of hand gestures, I did have someone leave a comment under a video recently and it just said it could do without the hands. I didn't reply, but it's just one of those ones where I was like, yeah, do you not think that if I could help it I would have done something about it by now? Sorry. Sorry, not sorry. Right, okay, again, taking a look back, if I just jump back this couple of pages again, sorry Iku. Back to Freddie. That's the one thing that I feel is missing from this set of Derwent pencils, and it kind of defeats the purpose of Inktense, but it would be really nice to have like an off-white, so like, you know, like a cream or an ivory colour, just so that you could take away the white of the paper, because I do try to do it with the yellows, but it's still yellow. That is something that pops into my head every now and then. I'm like, I wish they would just do that. We've got lemon. This is the newer colours. Remember I was talking about that a bit back at the start. The lemon is probably the most delicatest the most delicatest yellow when it's actually like diluted out. So I think that's probably wise. We'll go for that. But we are going to be using this very, 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 very sparingly. Very sparingly. I wonder what, this is a bit of an experiment. I'm just going to put like such a light layer down. Now, as I said, you only have to look at the cast shadow. It's really nice when somebody's giving you a cast shadow. And it's kind of going in this direction. So even if we just did that, I mean, that is so pale. And what I would do is I would use a really big brush for this to spread the colour out and dissipate it as much as possible. So I'm going to use this flat brush for this part. It'll just kind of like sweep the brush over it, honestly. Now see, I think that's enough because it tells you that there's light coming through. It's not going to take over the whole background because this section here especially is quite busy, so I don't really want a busy background in case it detracts too much, you know, just in case the whole thing becomes too busy basically. I'm not mad about that though, so yeah, I think that's not a bad idea. We will build on this with some shadow areas as well, because the thing about this this lead sort of, I don't know what to call it. Is it a casing or is it a framework? If anybody knows the actual answer to that, please let me know in the comments. You know I like to get things right. It's quite thick, so it does have a 3D shape and it will create shadows and light areas. So let's go for it. So we'll just pop a wee bit of that in there. Maybe a wee bit. And again, you can always build this up on a second layer. This bit's screwing me up as well though, because that's wrong compared to the rest of the pattern, because that would be your diamonds in there. So that's a diamond, but it's far too big to be a diamond. Right, we'll worry about that later. Concentrate, Gem. See, yeah, that would be one of those. I think I'll just make that like that. So that would be pink, blue, pink, blue. I'm just going to make that one of those just so that it fits in, because that would bug me otherwise. There, it's fine. No one will notice, I promise. Now, if you wanted, you could actually just leave this without activating it with water, because it sits quite well as pencil as well. It's definitely better with some colour in it though than without. I think sometimes it's nice, and I'm not scared of the white of the paper. There's quite a lot of times where I'll leave the white of the paper. But I think with a background like this, because it's such a large area, I think if we didn't do anything with it, it would make it look really unfinished. I'm not being particularly careful here because I just feel like I don't need to be. Wayward and haphazard. Such a rebel. It does look a wee bit odd on camera. The yellows and the the really bright colours, like lime greens and stuff, they always seem a lot more vibrant on camera than they do to the naked eye. And I've fiddled about with my camera settings so much that I don't even know if I'm back to where I started, kind of thing. And none of it seems to have made any difference. Being very careful not to touch that blue part there as well, because that wouldn't be very good. It would end up with some sort of obnoxious shade of green. This is fun. Like, I love this. It's fun. That's the one we've done. Come on, Jem. Get a grip of yourself. Oh, boy. Always the consummate professional here at the cave. Well, you know. Trying to avoid my candlestick there. Again, that's one of those places where you might feel a bit more comfortable if you're newer to this kind of thing with just using a smaller brush. I find it easier just to turn it on the side, instead of having it that way, just to turn it that way. And, pretend you're breathing in. Right, there we go. I think these two might need a bit more, but I'm going to have to leave them to dry now. So the other thing I've done is I've gotten one of my metallic tins of Julia K paints, and I've decided to go for a Loki here, which is like a sort of greyish colour, but it's got a little gold metallic fleck to it, and I think that would work quite nicely with the yellow panes, etc. So I thought that was a pretty good choice. You're really spoiled for choice with Julia's paints when it comes to dark paints with pigments in them. This whole bottom row all look very similar until you tilt them in the light, and you can see there's one that's got blue in it, there's one that's got purple in it, this one's really purple, one with green in. So, and then you've got slightly more odd choices like Mimer here, which is like a brownish colour, and it's got green in it as well. So if there was ever going to be a set of paints where I'd find what I wanted, it was Julia's paints for this. So we're going to leave that to the side. When I'm doing things like this and I'm working in small areas, I prefer to use an actual paintbrush rather than a water brush, because I like to keep the paint quite thick. And obviously if you're constantly brushing out with a water brush, you're diluting it as you go because the water's being released out the pen. I hope that makes sense. You can still get lovely results with a water brush, but I just find it easier, especially with motor function problems with my hand. I just find it easier with a teeny weeny paintbrush. Before we put this paint on, I just want to go back in and talk about this shadow, because we've now decided, we've pulled the trigger on this. So we now have a light side and a dark side. I want to pick out dark colours now, and I'm probably not going to dilute these out. So for the pink, I was thinking as a shadow colour, something like the mauve here. Mauve is, or maybe even thistle, or would be a good choice. So you've kind of got two lines of thought with this. A lot of people will use the opposite colour on the colour wheel for a shadow colour, like for a contrast colour, or you can go to a deeper shade, go down the spectrum, like round the next door neighbour's way, as I would say. I prefer to do that in a lot of instances, especially when it involves light shining through something. So I think I'll maybe try with the thistle and the mauve. I feel like the thistle might be too close, it won't be dark enough. And I think that the mauve have got a much better chance of getting that really shadowy feel. For the dark aquamarine, I would use the iron blue, which again was one of the pencils that was in the Scroller box set, and it's one of the colours I use all the time. It's a really pretty colour anyway, so it'll be hiding. This is my second iron blue pencil. I did have to replace it. Just as we were talking about the light hitting here, and that's kind of like giving us a little bit of the tint here. So therefore the shadow areas are going to be the opposite sides. So we've got the right hand side and the bottom right, which means that the top left and the left hand side are going to be the areas in shadow. So I'll use one of the full triangles. No, it's not a triangle, it's actually a square. People will say it's a diamond, it's just a square on its side. So yeah, in this instance, this is the iron blue. That's going to be your shadow area, because this is your lightest part here. Now it's up to you how far you take this. I'm just looking to add a little bit of depth. I don't actually, again, it's a background. You don't want to be going too ham with this, because you don't want people to be distracted from what they're supposed to be looking at, which is the stuff in the foreground, obviously. So, you know, there's but then again, everyone's preferences are different, and I've always kind of erred on the side of lighter is better when it comes to stuff like this. I'm like a less is more. So you can see the difference there just by adding that in. It's just, it looks good. It looks good. It's not sticking out in your face and you're like, Jesus, look at that. So that is what we're going to do. And there's no need for me to dilute that out at all. Again, I tend to favour texture, which is one of the reasons I like using pencils in the first place. It also kind of adds to that sort of slightly grubby feel that that we're getting from the ink house. I'm not mad about it not being uniform either. Again, these little panes of glass, they've all got little flecks and imperfections in them. So, oh, this one's still wet in here. Oh no. That's another thing to watch out for. You can see how much darker that is. If your paper is not completely dry and you go back in with your pencil, obviously it's going to activate. So you end up with like an explosion of colour, which is absolutely ridiculous. We will be able to rescue this though. Not that it's terrible, but we will make this very light and give a lot of contrast and no one will notice. Okay, quite happy with that now, so I'm going to move on to my mauve. I've got tea here as well. So again, same side. And I find that these little scumbling motions are best. So I am filming this today on a Wednesday, which is my day off from my proper job, so my main job. And I tend to spend it doing cave stuff. And I've got quite a lot of catching up to do. My up crate has landed as well, so I kind of need to do some filming with that. But one of the things that I'm going to do later on is our lounge, the ongoing saga of our lounge, is nearly finished. The last of our cabinets arrived. And Mr. Gems decided he wants a painting up on the wall, but he wants me to paint it. Now, that's fine, sort of. We have very simple tastes. We don't like bright patterns and busy things, and you know, we have quite clean living spaces in terms of the aesthetic. So it's just going to be a simple painting. It's not going to be anything too fancy or taxing, but it's going to be a fairly big canvas. So I was actually thinking I would film the process. I'll probably just film and voice over it, because I thought that might be quite a nice thing, because I'm going to be painting in acrylic, which is something I don't do very often. So I thought that might be a nice wee change, and I can use that video further down the line, maybe once we finished with this. I also have plans for the next colouring video, as in adult colouring being the subject, which I won't tell you about because I want it to be a surprise. But my wee brain's started kind of like ticking over again with stuff like that, and it hasn't been doing that for well over 6 months now, so it's kind of nice that's happening, and I'm enjoying the pace of actually filming and, you know, creating this content. And I'm starting to let go of the sort of guilt side of it, thinking, oh, you know, the guys are always saying that I missed, and you know, I'm starting to let go of that, and it's definitely much, much healthier. And I feel like I've got a much better balance now. But I have all these ideas, and I'm like, oh, I could film that. But yeah, I'm quite looking forward to painting on the canvas this afternoon. I haven't painted at an easel since we left the old place, which, you know, as I was talking about earlier, is nearly a year now. So it's going to have been a long time since I actually stood and painted at an easel. I don't have the panoramic views in the sunroom and the space that I had in the old place. Wouldn't be any use today anyway, because you can't see 2 inches in front of your face if you look outside. I had family visiting a couple of weekends ago, and my uncle asked me if I missed the old place, because we were in like the house was like 5 times the size of the one we're in now, and he asked me if I missed the old house. And do you know, weirdly, number one, the house was too big for Mr. Gem and I and the dogs. Like we didn't need a house that size. But that wasn't really the intention with it. You know, we were kind of hanging on to that because we were thinking about our parents getting older. You know, having to look after them, that would give us plenty of space if they had to come and live with us, that kind of thing. But the house needed so much done to it. It was really drafty. It was a fortune to heat it, and cleaning it was just an absolute night. Like, the house was never as clean as I wanted it to be, because I just didn't have time to get round the whole blinking thing. And we did try it after lockdown, because we moved into that house like literally a month before they brought in the lockdown regulations here in the UK, and after lockdown, we tried to get a cleaner and just no one would come out that far. They weren't interested. You know, obviously they could have 4 or 5 much smaller houses, easier jobs, closer together, you know, down near the nearest village or whatever, and not, you know, not have to spend the money travelling. So that wasn't really an option either. Okay, I am happy with that. That's better. Do you see how much dimension that's given that? And then look at this one here that hasn't had anything. I don't, and it made me sort of sit and think about it for a wee while, and there's aspects of the old house that I miss. I miss the sunroom and having that spectacular view, but then I think about the opposite season, and I think about winter, and this is what people kind of forget. You know, people come and visit Scotland in summer, and especially where we were, I used to call it bandit country, like it was quite remote, and it was difficult to get places just because of the lay of the land and the fact that there was a lot of trees. So any stormy weather, there was often flooded areas or trees down. So it kind of isolated you, and that weather was relentless. And I mean, we were down at -12 quite frequently. It's hard going and it's pretty grim in the winter. So, you know, there's pros and cons. But I actually, you know, because everyone automatically assumes that you'd miss having this great big house, but I actually don't. This house is much better size-wise for us, although we are having to put an extension on it, but it's only a little extension. So that was quite interesting, because it's just something that I hadn't really thought about since we've moved. A bit contemplative. Right, okay, how does that look? Now I want to just do this framework to finish us off today. I'm trying to gauge what size of brush I would use here. I do have this Pro Art number 2 white nylon that hasn't been used. You can't see it at all against the paper. I'm wondering if that's a bit small. I'm going to have to be a number 4. Yeah, I'm going to go, right, okay, so we're on the Sea White synthetic brush here. This is a number 2. I sell these in the stash shop. I've also got all the sizes of the flat brushes of these now. I used to only stock 1 or 2. I do have the full range now, so I think they start at a 4. I might be wrong here. Yeah, like there's a 6, just to give you an idea of the size. There's the 6, so they start at a 4 and they go all the way up to a 14. And the 14's in the flat's quite a big brush. So if you've been missing out on the flat brush, love, because I haven't had them, they're now the full range is now there if you'd like to grab a hold of those. I'm gonna have to switch out my cup of tea for my water here. Now with Julia's palettes, especially when they've got metallic pigment in them, this isn't limited to Julia's palettes, it goes for all paint. It's a really good idea to pre-soak them and just allow that pigment to sort of mix in with the metallic parts. So staying on brand, I have my Derwent spritzer here, and I'm just going to give that a couple of scooshes and leave it for a wee second just to settle in. Now if I tilt that, you can see that the water's sitting on the top and moving about, and if we leave that for a couple of minutes, you'll see that the pigment starts to go with it. It's starting to do it already. That's what we want, because if we don't do that, then what happens is we get the pigment and we don't get any of the metallic elements, and you end up with like a clump of like a really sparkly bit, and the rest's all just flat paint. So we have to do that. You could use a flat brush for this as well. I'm just thinking you could use it on its end. I wouldn't be brave enough to do that. I would rather just stick with a weeny brush. Right, okay, so we give this a mix now. There we go. Oh yeah, we're jamming now. I don't necessarily want this to be super concentrated, because I've realised that Rory actually has some hatching in these areas. This is just a case of time, patience, steady hand, don't overload your brush, don't be frightened. All of those things that everybody just does automatically. No, this is just practice. The good thing is with watercolour though, if you go a wee bit outside the lines, you can usually mop it up pretty quickly. So let's start here and just see how that's going to sit. The other thing that you can use in areas like this, if you do want a metallic finish and you're maybe not confident with paint, or you just don't have any of Julia's paints, because that's one thing I will say, and you know I'm a huge advocate for her paints. They are very expensive though, and it's because they're handmade and they use things like Swedish honey and whatnot in them, and I realise it's not within everyone's budget to pay £7 for a half pan. If you have metallic gel pens or Some of these paint markers as well. I'm thinking like the Pilot metallic one. Does everyone know the one I'm talking about? It's got like a metallic gold barrel and it's got a little ball bearing in it. It's got a black cap on it. You can use something like that because that if you don't have that much confidence with a paintbrush, you'll still get that same lovely metallic finish without having to risk it. So that's just another option for you if for whatever reason this isn't your kind of thing. Obviously there are plenty of other really pretty metallic watercolours out there as well. Julia K's are not necessary, they're just my preference. If I'm not using these for metallic things, I really like the Gansai Tambi Starry colours. I use the golds in that. It is mostly golds. I think there's 2 silvers. I use them quite a lot as well. You know, I don't exclusively use Julia's paints. So they're another option as well. I don't actually know how much a palette is. I'll maybe look it up and let you know the prices for that as well, just roughly. I'm trying to be methodical here. I don't know how well that's going, but we're still going. The other thing as well is if I do have areas and I've gone a wee bit over there and the paint's quite concentrated, you can go back over that with a really thin fine liner if you want to put the black line work back in. Usually, again, it's something I wait and see what the finished picture is going to look like and just see how obvious it looks, and if it's not that obvious, I don't bother. Again, that's down to personal preference. Now I've got a wee bit too much paint here. If that happens, try not to panic and remember that wherever you put water down, the paint will follow. So I'm just going to bring that down here because there's far too much and it's starting to pull up a bit there. When I say pull, I mean as in swimming pool, not as in pull and push. These WC white brushes are great for this because they've got good spring in them because they're synthetic. But I also, I like everything about them. I like the full length, and not so much with these smaller ones, right enough, but I find that the actual handle diameter is pretty good. I get cramped up pretty quickly when I'm doing stuff like this. And like a thicker handle isn't necessarily any better. I've tried lots of things. I've tried these kind of like rubber grip things you get as well, and nothing helps. But I think it's more a case of I've just gotten used to these paintbrushes because I've been using them for quite a long time now. And I suppose it's like putting on an old pair of slippers or something, isn't it? But I just really like them. And they still hold a decent amount of water. Because again, I've come across some of these synthetic brushes. I mean, they're super cheap. You're not going to be losing out by doing a bit of trial and error. But I've come across some other synthetic brushes and they just don't hold any water, or they hold very little water. Now, if you're using them for detail work like this, or maybe for like gouache and acrylic, you're not looking for the same retention of water as you would be with watercolour. But it means you're forever like re-dipping your brush. Not all cheap synthetic brushes are made equal. Oh, there's a few really tiny bits in there. Good grief. Deep breaths. Now, we're just going to do our best with this edge here. This is a really awkward angle for me. Obviously, if I was right-handed, this side would be easier, but the same thing would happen on the other side. So we'll just try and do what we can do there. That wasn't too painful, but yeah, it's a bit of a weird angle, that one. I'm actually just pushing that in with the brush like that. That's the movement I'm making, just to get it into that little corner. Yeah, there we go. It's fine. I think one of the main challenges of doing something like this, for me certainly, maybe not for others, it was developing the patience to ignore that impulse to rush. Because it is really tempting, especially once you kind of get into a groove with it. You're like, right, I can go faster. And it really did. Like, it took me a long time to be able to just ignore that. It's still there even now, but it's more like somebody, like an annoying person, like tapping you on the shoulder every now and then, rather than, somebody sitting on your shoulder going faster repeatedly for hours. And the thing is as well, though, like, even if you're not a particularly patient person, I would not describe myself as a patient person, and I'm pretty sure Mr. Jem would agree. But there are certain things that I have patience for, like animals. I always have patience for animals, and I have endless patience for animals. And it's the same with this, but I think maybe because my preferred medium is pencil, it is, apart from oil paints, it's probably the slowest medium you're going to work in. So if you have enjoyment out of that, then obviously you're going to have more patience for something you enjoy than something you don't. But it can be developed, is what I'm saying, and even if that is not your disposition as a person generally, doesn't mean that you can't do it. I mean, I love taking time over things like this, because you get a real sense of like it's achievement out of it when you've finished, although it's taken forever. And I know my mum says the same thing. She started doing cross stitches, and she did this huge canvas that I bought her. It was only like the second one she'd ever done, but it was a lot bigger than I thought it was going to be. Like, we didn't realise it was absolutely gigantic. Do you know what? She persevered, and my mum has zero patience. Like, my mum's the least patient person I know. She actually went and got it framed professionally, and it hangs up in her and Papa Jem's lounge now. And she said it was like the immense sense of satisfaction when you've worked that hard and that long on something. Like, it's really rewarding. And then obviously you have a reminder of that because it's permanent. I get that as well. I even get that outside. We were talking about our favourite jobs out on the farm. And one of the things that I like doing, which seems a bit odd, is I like going fencing. If you have a new fence to put up or repairing a fence, it's hard work, and again, I've got to be very careful with my hand, especially like when I'm hammering things, all that kind of stuff. And it's physically quite hard work, especially if you're short. And if any of you have ever worked outside on stuff like that, or have family that have, you'll understand what I mean. You have a severe height disadvantage in terms of how much effort you have to put in to hammer in posts if you're short. It's really, really hard work when you're my height, because I am not that tall. I'm only 5'3". So not tiny, but I'm not tall at all. So when I go out fencing, I really enjoy it, because then every time I drive past the fence, I look at it and I think, I did that. And especially if you've done a good job of it, which isn't always the case, but if you've done a really good quality job. Again, I refer back to Clarkson's farm when Jeremy and Lisa built the fence for the goats and the pigs and stuff. Mr. Jem and I were sitting crying into our cups of tea because they really can't fence. But yeah, that's a strange job that I find really satisfying, because it's quite permanent. I mean, I know eventually fences get damaged and they have to be replaced, but they stay put for quite a while, so there's definitely a level of satisfaction out of that as well. Doesn't beat cuddling cows right enough, but cuddling cows isn't quite as productive as putting up fences. Which is a shame, really, because I would be like an Olympian at that then. I was out chatting to the girls the other day. We still have 12 cows. We have a dozen cows that still haven't had their calves. And I'm at the point now where I go out and give them a little pep talk every night before we go to bed. I'm like, right, girls, now, come on. You're not getting outside to play, because all the other cows are outside now. Everybody's out grazing. Like, you're not getting out to play until you've spat a baby out. So, come on, how's about it? And they just kind of like stand and keep chewing away and look at you as if to say, what is this woman rattling on about? It's been a few days now, so we've just ground to a halt, which always happens, like it's inevitable. But we're kind of over it now, because we're into the second half of May. Everyone should be done and dusted and out and bouncing about and happy. Well, maybe not today, right enough. Okay, let's take a wee zoom out now. I am quite pleased with how this has started off. I'm a wee bit concerned about this candle getting lost in the middle here, but we will do some work on that to make sure that it doesn't. Well, that's it for today, guys. I hope you've enjoyed yourself. If I just tip this now, you can see the paint's dried a bit, and we've got that nice little metallic sheen there, but it's still dark enough to be sort of lead, if you like. If you did like this, please let me know in the comments if you'd like to continue on. What I will say is that if we do decide to keep going, I will continue and do this side of the stained glass off camera, so that when we come back in the next videos, we can start some fun stuff like the books. So yeah, this has been really nice. It's been so long since we've done a video like this, and I really enjoy filming this type of video because it lets me just rattle on and kind of like relax and, you know, feel as if I'm just sitting chatting to friends, which, you know, I consider quite a lot of you to be at this point. So let me know in the comments if you would like this to be a series. I will get onto it and get the next video out fairly quickly. And I hope that you enjoy the rest of your day today, guys, and I'll see you back in here really soon, either for one of these or an unboxing. So have a great day, everyone, and bye-bye for now.